Hello Nation, welcome to the show. We help you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander CheapSkate, and now it's time for another edition of the 9th Saga. This is our series of 9th Age battle reports. This is battle report number 18. It is a 4,500 point battle report, and the reason why we made the change from 5,000 down to 4,500 is because we realized we were actually playing at a much higher level of gaming than we were actually trying to. We thought that by doubling the points with the 9th Age from the old Warhammer system from 2,500 points to 5,000 points, we thought we were actually doing a pretty good job. We found out later on that we were actually playing at the 3,000 point level, so we kind of dropped it down to 4,500 points. So this is our very first series where we actually play at 4,500. It is fought between myself with my Legion of the Hellmouth with my Warriors of the Dark Gods of Change army versus my friend Lady Dominar with her House Daycare, the Golden Reavers of Skyros, her Dread Elves army. So let's see exactly what happens with 4,500 points of Dread Elves, as well as Warriors of the Dark God of Change, fight it out in the world of the 9th Age. And we're going to do the little list a little bit differently this time. I'm just going to play some music and just kind of show the army offs with the list going past it. If you want to see exactly what we brought for each side, you can pause at your own leisure and take a look. So without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's go on with the battle report. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, as you guys can possibly see here on the deployment, as you can see, we're fighting on a 4x6 table as always. It's kind of interesting with this time when we deployed up on the battlefield, we didn't really use the entirety of the table. We kind of scrunched up here to the flank on the left-hand side. And the reason why is because if you notice in the middle of the battlefield, we have this huge 10-inch hill, this piece of impassable terrain. The flat piece on top is actually kind of cool. It's a massively huge hill that was built by resident terrain maker Iron Major. He's the guy who makes all of our terrain for our battle reports. He did another amazing job. This is the same guy. All the terrain you're seeing here is pretty much made by him, and he kind of did it all by himself out of homemade scraps of styrofoam and cardboard and just plaster and paint and all kinds of cool stuff. We're thinking about doing actually a series of videos just talking about exactly how that process happens. But enough of the oozing over the terrain, because the terrain looks really cool. So as you can see here, fighting against my opponent, Lady Dominar, she took the near side of the table this time, and I'm deploying the very far side of the board. As you can see, both of our forces are kind of deployed on the left-hand flank. The reason why is because the hill dominates the center of the battlefield, so it's really about getting around the hill and trying to engage each other as quickly as possible, try to take each other out. Since I'm a pretty slow army, I'm just going to huddle all my troops over the left-hand flank, so that way my left flank is secured, and all I got to worry about is things coming out from my right flank, and it looks like my opponent just kind of set up right across from me to match the same way. So with that being said, let's go to the individual deployment areas and talk about where all our forces are located at. Alright, here are my forces located on the left-hand flank. As you can see in this photo, I just have my second sons. That's my unit of 10 Wasteland Knights of Change. They're also packing the banner transmutation, and they're also carrying demonic weapons. And I kind of located them here so that way they can kind of protect my left flank of my army. At the same time, they can charge into the explosive flank of Lady Dominar's army as well and try to take advantage of some of the charges they can do. Lady Dominar has light cavalry protecting her left flank, so I figured why not? Might as well just try to do the best with that. So as you can see here, there's a close-up of that photo. Let's kind of talk about my center now. Alright, so here's a close-up of the center portion of my army. As you can see, I have my Stormlords. That's my unit of 30 Warriors of the Dark Gods of Change, Wasteland Warriors. As you can see, they're also equipped with Halberds and Shield. I also have in that unit my Harbinger of Chaos, that's Echoed Hellbrast, the Champion of Sneech. He's my Battle Standard Bearer. This unit also has both the banner speed and the Nine-Tailed Standard, so that way everybody within the range of the Nine-Tailed banner also gets a +1 movement to their movement. But the reason why I did that, so that way my Warriors of the Dark Gods, my unit of Halberdiers, gets +2 to their movement because I have the whole army full of fast movers, and I gotta get these guys moving across the battlefield as quickly as possible. So it gives them a 6-inch movement rate, which is actually kind of good. Also, we located on the very back on the right, that is Lord Tremendous, the Harbinger of the Nine Ages. That's my Demon Prince of Change. He's kind of watching at the flank at the same time, giving his Inspiring Presence rule to this unit of Wasteland Warriors. And then right in front of him, we have, of course, the Shadow over Innistrad. That is my Vortex Fiend, and that thing is located there, so that way it can cast spells. Also, put Aura of Madness on my opponent and give them -1 to their leadership. So that's going to make a deployment here on my center lines. And finally, located out the table is my unit of Barbarians. These are my ambushers for my army. It is a unit of 25 Jarls Barbarians. These guys have both Vanguard as well as Ambusher special rules, and that's because their unit leader, Wolfric the Wanderer, he has the Osklander Jarl upgrades. Because of that, these guys can do ambushing and Vanguard so long as the unit's within 25 members. I equipped them both with light armor, shields, as well as hand weapons, and I also gave them throwing weapons, so that way when they deploy at the rear line of my opponent's battle lines, I could take out whatever they can with throwing weapons. And since they're in a close range anyways, it's kind of a good way of doing things that way. My plan here is to have these guys deploy behind Lady Domina's main line and hopefully chew them up, and then kind of get her army in a pincer attack, or just being attacked from both sides. So that's pretty much the plan I'm kind of going with here on this one. So that makes it my deployment for that. Let's go talk about Lady Domina's. Here's a close-up of Lady Domina's Dread Elves army with her left flank. As you can see, she has her Shacklemore Seers, which are her 5 Dark Acolytes, as well as her 5 Dark Riders right next to them. That's the Shadowrunners. If you notice, there's also a Dark Pegasus Rider. What ended up happening is that Lady Domina accidentally put this unit on the table. She was looking at the wrong list at the time. She was looking at her 5,000 point list, so she thought she actually had that character. You'll notice the next photo over that is missing, and the reason why is because she made a bad call with that model. So, no harm, no foul. It's a simple accident. Happens all the time. Also, if you notice behind her on the top of that hill, there's also their Dread Reapers. Those are her 2 Storms of Kos. They're kind of located there to give some long-range firepower and to kind of protect the Overwatcher army as they're marching across the field. So that makes up the close-up on the left-hand flank. And here is a close-up of the center deployment for the Dread Elves army. Up in the front, you can see the huge unit of Dread Legionaries equipped with the Banner of Gordagos that gives them +1 to wound. That's the Sea Stone Sorrows. In that unit, we also have the Battle Standard Bearer, Captain Lodi Kir, as well as the Sorceress, the Oracle Sister Sinner, the Oracle of Kos. She's also located in that unit as well. And then right behind them, of course, you have the Morning Dawn. There's a unit of 20 Repeater Auxiliaries with the Flaming Standards, so that way they can switch up to flaming attacks if they need to. And then make up the right-hand flank of Lady Domina's army, we have Virazil the Broken, as well as Wrathwick the Maw. Those are her War Hydras and Kraken, respectively. And then right behind them, of course, is Beast Lord Midas Dakir, the Golden Lord of Skyros. That guy's mounted on his Manticore Calibos, and he's just kind of laying there, so that way he can lead his monsters as well as give Inspiring Presence. So that'll make up the center deployment for this one. And because my opponent has light cavalry, here's a close-up of the Vanguard movement. As you can see, she sends up both her Shacklemore Seers as well as her Shadowrunners up 12 inches right into the middle of the board, just kind of harass my second sons located on the left-hand flank. And as you notice, of course, there's that picture of the Dark Pegasus Rider. Don't worry, on the next photo, that character will not be there. So with that being said, we go directly to the top of turn number 1 for this battle report. And that takes us directly to turn number 1. I am on initiative on this one, so I get to go first. As you can see in this photo, I just pretty much sent everything up gingerly forward is all I did. Originally, what I did on the left-hand flank is I declared charges with my second sons against her Shacklemore Seers. They fled in response. They got away about 9 inches. At the same time, I also declared and decided to redirect and charge against the Shadowrunners. They also redirected as well, so they also fled back 9 inches as well. So all I really did is I just kind of marched up my unit of cavalry up about 8 inches, right where they're on the other side of that tower, so that way they can kind of lend some support to the left-hand flank of my Stormlords. At the same time, I kind of moved up my Stormlords with their Battle Standard Bearer as well as the Shadow over Innistrad. I moved up kind of gingerly on the other side to kind of keep them in a nice little blocking position between the tower as well as the hill, so that way they can't get flanked on either side. And then, of course, I marched Lord Tremendous and flew him directly to the top of the Eagle's Nest. That's what we're calling that hill that's in the middle of the table. He's right there at the top of the Eagle's Nest, getting a good little view of this army. Because the way that my opponent, Lady Domina, laid out her army, I can pretty much much see what the plan is. The plan is to kind of suppress me in the middle, then flank me with monsters as well as light cavalry, and I definitely don't want to fall for that trap. The only thing I can hope for is that eventually my opponent will lose patience and try to come to me. That's assuming she doesn't magic me as well as shoot me off the table with shooting as well as magic, because this is a Dread Elves army and they actually do that very well. So that pretty much makes up the movement phase for turn number 1. And that takes us directly to the bottom of turn number 1 for the Dread Elves. Not really much happened my turn. My magic phase is actually just horrible. I think I rolled like a 3. My opponent laid down was able to outroll all my spells and dispel everything I had going on. I have no shooting and there was no close combat, so we go directly to the Dread Elves. And this picture is taken after the movement phase. As you can see in this photo, she actually kind of positions her troops in such a way to kind of start isolating different parts of my army from support from one another. Starting from the left-hand flank, as you can see there, she sends her Shacklemore Seers directly to the front of my second son, so that way if I decide to charge, I can only charge at a forward arc and engage that unit. The problem though is that I have a feeling that if I do that, that unit will flee, and that kind of opens them up for being shot at. At the same time, surrounding the right hand flank of my second sons, I also have the Shadowrunners facing them down as well, which could actually be kind of devastating if these two units decide to charge them at the same time, because then I'm fighting 2 different units on 2 different fronts, and that could actually stack up against my army pretty badly, so that's not really good at all. At the same time, in the center portion of the board, as you can see, she marches up her Seastone Sorrows, just moves them up about 5 inches their normal movement length, just to kind of get themselves set up right there in the hill. And at the same time, she maneuvers her monsters. Starting with Rathric the Maw, moves him up about 6 inches. That way, he's directly in line with my Vortex Fiend for the Shadow of Innistrad. At the same time, she also moves up her Warhydra of the Broken, as well as her General Beast Lord Midas Daykir, and moves them towards the base of the Eagle's Nest, so that way they can kind of set up a charge if they have to, or at the same time protect the right hand flank of the army. So as you can see, Lady Dama, she's not falling for my trap either. I'm not falling for her, so now we're just kind of like stuck in this weird kind of situation. We have all kinds of movement shenanigans taking place. So that pretty much makes up the movement phase for this turn. Unfortunately for Lady Domino, we skipped the magic phase because she just had her horrible roll of the dice. She rolled Snake Eyes, so we lost magical flux on that part. It's because that no roll of spells are going through. Shooting phase is also not all that impressive, and the reason why is because her Morning Dawn was firing at long range with the repeater crossbows, at the same time firing multiple shots as well. So that kind of gives her, she has to roll like a 5 or a 6 in order to hit. So because of that, she opens up with that, as well as her Dread Reapers onto my unit of Stormlords as well. Only managed to kill off 3 of my soldiers. 3 of the Wasteland Warriors kind of died due to failed armor saves. It was really lackluster shooting phase. She's just rolling a whole bunch of 1s and 2s. I felt really bad for Lady Domino on that part because her shooting was pretty much lackluster on that. And since there's no real close combat taking place in this battle report, this turn, we go directly to the top of turn number 2 for the Warriors of the Dark Gods. Alright, here's a shot of the table after turn 2 for the Warriors of the Dark Gods. This is taking place directly after the movement phase. First of all, when it comes to charges, I originally tried to declare a charge with my second sons against the Shacklemore Seers. They're on the left-hand side, but my opponent, Lady Domina, she decided to flee with those guys in response instead. So those 5 Dark Acolytes, they fly back some like 10 inches and they just kind of get away to the base of that hill there. So at the same time, because I can't really charge anything because everything is out on my charge arc, I just use the movement phase and redirect the second sons so that way they can face off against the Dark Riders, which would be kind of interesting because if she decides to flee her next turn when I try to charge at them, there might be units right there and they're okay in the middle, so the Dark Riders don't know where to go, so they might just get chopped to the pieces when that happens. At the same time as that happening, I also keep everything else pretty much dislocating the same in the center. My Stormlords as well as my Vortex Fiend, they just kind of inch up a couple inches, so that way they kind of entice my opponent to come charging at me, so that way it gets your units out of movement. At the same time, I also take a leadership check, pass it, and I also march Lord Tremendous, have him fly directly over the Manticore, and have him kind of face where he's located at now, so that way he can get off charges on both the Manticore or any of those monsters at his leisure. The most important part of the movement phase, however, took place when I rolled for my ambushers. I rolled a 6, so because of that, my Barbarians kind of show up on the table with Wolfric the Wanderer and the crew of the Seaclaw. I put them right behind that unit of Morning Dawn because those are elves. I got throwing weapons, and if I can chop out some of those guys and take out some of the shooters, all the better as far as I'm concerned as well. And as you can see, I'm kind of set up in such a way where I have like a pincer tech now where I can send my Wasteland Warriors charging the front where those Dread Spears are, the Dread Legionaries rather are. At the same time, I can send my Barbarians to the back of the Repeater Auxiliaries, hopefully take those guys out and then have them charge directly into that unit of infantry and then counter them in kind of like a pincer attack. So that's pretty much the scheme maneuver that's going on this part. During the magic phase, my fortune quickly turned around when I rolled up for the magic dice. I got 12, my opponent got 6, so because of that, I had an actually pretty good magic phase. She ended up dispelling quite a bit of my spells in the process of doing so, but what I really had to get off was a couple of spells that are very important. First of all, I got Awaken the Beast off onto my barbarians, so now they have +1 strength as well as +1 toughness, so that's really going to help them out, especially during the shooting phase where they throw their tomahawks right at the back of those, Morning Dawn at strength 4 and having multiple shots of 2. That's just going to be amazing. Plus, they're quick to fire, so you don't have to worry about doing -1 to hit either, so that is pretty amazing as well. At the same time, I also got Chilling Howl off in case my opponent laid down and decides to get a little squirrely and start shooting out my rear units here. Let's look in the back flank of our army from those bolt throwers. So now it's -1 to hit against them for shooting. I'm sorry, now hit -1 to hit, -1 to wound against shooting. And at the same time, if you notice right there on the left-hand side of my barbarians, I also summoned up on Totemic Summons. I got off Spam, who's another one of my monsters, located right there. And his goal is to pretty much shoot his breath weapon at one of those bolt throwers during the shooting phase and have him charge my next turn and start taking out that second bolt thrower. So like I said before, pretty active magic phase, and that part was actually pretty cool. So the magic phase over, we go directly to the shooting phase. So in the shooting phase, I opened up with the throwing axes for my barbarians into the back of the Morning Dawn. As you can see in this photo, I just cut that unit in half. We just chopped those guys to pieces. Having the +1 strength was a really huge bonus for my troops, so that way they could just wound on 3-ups. And since these guys only have light armor and shields, there's no real, and they get -1 to the armor save, they're basically rolling 6 to survive. Managed to kill half of these guys. Unfortunately, though, Lady Donna did pass her panic test, so those guys aren't going anywhere. However, because there's only 10 of those guys left, I can easily charge into my barbarians on my next turn, destroy that unit, have them break them, or just annihilate them completely, and then overrun to the back of the Seastone Sorrows. That's pretty much the plan I have going on this side. At the same time, Spam opens up with his breath attack, gets 9 different hits and wounds onto that bolt thrower. I think they got 9 hits. I think I wounded like 5 times. Had no problem destroying that Dread Reaper. That thing got basically atomized off the table. So now my next turn, I'm going to charge that monster directly into the next bolt thrower and just kind of have it done. At the very least, though, hopefully Lady Dawn will take the bait and shoot at my Totemic Summons and not at Lord Tremendous or at my unit of barbarians. But you know, we never know what's happening with Lady Dawn. She's pretty like a wild card on that part. So anyways, that takes us to the shooting phase, and since there's no close combat, we go directly to the bottom of turn number 2 for the Dread Elves. Alright, so here's a photo of turn number 2 for the Dread Elves after the movement phase. As you can see, Rathric the Maw, the Kraken, charged directly and made a long bomb charge directly into my Shadow over Innistrad. So now my Vortex Fiend is now engaged in close combat. At the same time, as you can see in the left-hand side, both the Shacklemore Seers as well as the Dark Riders, the Shadowrunners, what they decide to do is kind of surround my Second Sons once again, so that way they can kind of harass them with shooting and also with magic possibly, and just cause all kinds of problems for them at the same time. While that's occurring, if you look at the bottom of the page in the back ranks, the Morning Dawn, they quickly do a swift reform, turn 180 degrees and reform their battle line, so that way they're 5 wide and 2 deep, and they're basically just protecting the back of the Seastone Sorrows, and they're facing down my my barbarians. At the same time, both the War Hydra, Veers of the Broken, and the General Beastlar Midas Day Cure and his Manticore Calibos, they turn 180 to face against Lord Tremendous as well, and possibly try to dare my General to charge at one of them. So that pretty much makes the movement phase for this one. Because much of her magic phase wasn't all that great, all she really did is, I forgot the name of the spell, I think it's called, not Altered Sight, but Perception of Strength, I believe the spell is. She got that buff spell off onto her Morning Dawn, gave him +1 strength, so that's going to be kind of tough, especially since if I get engaged with close combat, they'll be winning on me on 3-up in close combat as well, because in case I can't get off Awaken the Beast off. So she got that magic off. That was the only spell she was able to get. However, during the shooting phase, which this photo kind of shows you right here, they managed to chop off about 7 of my barbarians, between the Dread Reaper as well as the crossbow fire from that Morning Dawn as well. So she decided to take a bait, decided to skip and not shoot at my Totemic Summons and cause as much damage as possible to my barbarians. It makes sense because I'm going to use those guys to try to charge and get that Dread Legionaries into a pincer attack. So she didn't fall for the bait. She decided to go after those guys instead, and now I'm kind of sad because that unit is about 2/3 of the normal strength that was supposed to be at. So that pretty much makes up the shooting phase on this one. That being said, we go directly to close combat. And it's a battle of titans. As you can see here, the Kraken as well as the Shadow over Innistrad, my Vortex Fiend, all that really managed to happen is in the end, the combat ended up in a draw. The reason why is because I managed to put 2 wounds onto the Rathric the Maw. Rathric the Maw managed to put 1 wound onto my Vortex Fiend. And what really saved my Vortex Fiend in close combat is the fact that it's got the hard cover special rule, so it's -1 to hit against because of that. And this does represent that this monster has a vortex of swirling magical energy around his body that kind of protects it as well. It was a little bit lackluster. Usually these monsters are a lot deadlier because they get to use stomp attacks, but since they're both monsters, they can't really do that to each other. Fight ends up being a draw. I inflicted 2 wounds. He inflicted 1. Lady Domina inflicted 1 wound and also a charge, so they're not going anywhere. So those 2 monsters are just kind of sticking out right now on the right-hand side. So that pretty much makes the combat phase. With that being said, we go directly to the top at turn number 3 for the Warriors of the Dark Gods. Alright, this is the top of turn number 3, and this is after the move phase. As you can see in this photo, I pretty much charged everything I possibly could into my enemy's army. Starting from the left and working our way right, you can see that my Totemic Summon spam charged directly into that Dread Reaper, so now that unit is engaged in close combat. I have no illusions whatsoever that spam will have no problem destroying that Dread Reaper. Yeah, that's what he's designed for, is to take out artillery pieces. At the same time, if you look at the top of the board, my second Sun's charged directly into the Shadowrunners, which was actually kind of interesting. I was expecting Lady Domina to flee with those guys, but she decided to stick it out, and I think the reason why is because she was afraid I would try to redirect into the flank of those Dread Spears and get Dread Legionaries, and then get them into like a development with that tactic. So she kind of sticks those guys out and kind of sacrifices them to kind of hold me up. At the same time, in the center portion of the board, I charge Wolfric the Wanderer and his crew, the Sea Fang, directly into the Morning Dawn, so now those two units are directly into close combat. At the same time, I also make a long bomb charge with my my Stormlords, and they successfully charge directly into the Sea Stone Sorrow, so now those two units will be engaged in close combat as well. I then take Lord Tremendous, I march him over to the right-hand flank of my Stormlords, and have him turn that way to kind of protect his flank against the War Hydra as well as against the Manticore, because I'm used to using this Monster Mash list when I play Warhammer, the Golden Age, so Lady Domina's not going to get that trick off where she follows my infantry units either, so that pretty much makes up the move phase for this one. Unfortunately for me, Magic phase was a complete wash. I rolled like a 1 and a 2, and then like Lady Domina also got off another dice roll for her channeling for Dispel dice, shut down my entire Magic phase. And since everything is engaged in close combat, there is no shooting. So you can see in this photo, my second sons had no problems just curb stomping the Shadow Riders. They just kind of Shadow Riders. They just kind of destroyed that unit entirely. I was thinking about trying to overrun with these guys so that way they can kind of engage the Sea Stone Sorrows on the left hand flank. However, the way that these guys would have done it if I overran, wasn't going to be putting up in a good position at all. So I decided to restrain instead, took a quick leadership test, successfully passed, and had them reform instead to face off against the Shackamore Seers, which is those 5 Dark Acolytes. So I get really, really lucky. My opponent laid down will either just keep those guys there or charge my Knights. That way they kind of engage in close combat, tie them up, or worst case scenario, I try to charge these guys and they flee instead, and I'm just busy chasing this unit down all over the board. So that makes up the combat phase on the left-hand side of the board. Alright, combat against the Dread Spears is absolutely atrocious for my opponent. I originally issued out a challenge with my Battle Center Bear, my Alcold Hellbrass, the Champion Sneech, because he has the Gaze of the God special rule. He has to. Unfortunately for my opponent, Lady Domina decided to answer with her champion instead. Alcold Hellbrass had no problem putting the 3 wounds on that guy and killing him, so that way we have 3 wounds already added to my combat bonuses as well. Between the combat, she managed to kill about 4 more of my Stormlords, but at the same time, though, my Stormlords managed to kill 7 of hers and managed to put that into the combat difference as well. After charges and banners, I win by 7 points. These guys have to automatically take a break. She rolls like a 5. She gets a reroll because of her banner center better. Fails that roll again, and so now these guys are running as well. Before we move on, though, I forgot to take a picture of the combat between my Barbarians as well as the Morning Dawn. All you basically need to know about that combat is absolutely brutal. I beat them by 5 because I killed somebody of the Morning Dawn as well. They broke as well. I pursued them as well, and so now we catch both these units into kind of like a pincer attack. As you can see in this photo, we kind of overran into the 2 units, had to stop where we are because we're charging to each other's units, but we overran those 2 units. The Morning Dawn as well as the Sea Stone Star are now absolutely destroyed on that part. So now Lady Domina's infantry is completely annihilated against. All she really has now is a unit of fast cav as well as her monsters to kind of keep her list together. So absolutely brutal combat phase for Lady Domina. Pretty successful for me. I got off pretty lucky in some of my attacks on that part. That's just because I had higher toughness and higher strength, and that was the only reason why I was able to keep up with her. So that pretty much makes it the combat phase on this side of the table. And on the combat between these 2 monsters, all they managed to do is inflict a single wound on each other. So Wrathwick the Maw is now carrying 3 wounds. My Shadows of Innistrad is carrying 2 wounds now. And because it's a draw, these 2 monsters aren't going anywhere in close combat either. So they're both just occupied, just beating the living crap of each other, which is actually kind of cool. Looks like something out of Pacific Rim if I had to imagine it. So that pretty much makes the combat phase for this one. And that takes us directly to the bottom of turn number 3 for the Dread Elves. As you can see in this photo, she kind of just turns her forces in order in such a way so that we can direct her charges at 2 different opponents. Actually, in the top left-hand corner there, if you notice those 5 Shacklemore Seers, those 5 Dark Acolytes, they're actually supposed to be engaged directly into the second sun. She declared a charge and she may not accepted the charge as well. But for some or other reason, we forgot to show them actually moving the models to actually get them engaged in close combat. So those units are supposed to be engaged. So just a little FYI because we forgot to do that. At the same time, if you notice there on the right hand side, she also turns her general as well as her War Hydra. She moves in position in such a way so that way she can charge directly to Lord Tremendous, as well as charging into one of my huge infantry units as well. So that's pretty much makes it the move phase for this. Because Lady Dominant has no shooting or magic phases because all those units are destroyed, we go directly to the combat phase. As you can see in this photo, my second sons had no problem just putting the hurt onto those 5 Dark Acolytes as well. It was actually kind of an interesting combat. She tried to attack me, but unfortunately for her, a number of poison attacks landed. She couldn't roll any 6s, so because of that, those guys kind of survived that attack as well. However, what really kind of finished off this unit of Dark Acolytes was the fact that my unit is carrying Marks of Change, and so because of that, we did use the Hellfire special rule, not the Hellfire special rule, sorry, I used the Divine Attacks rule for these guys, so that way the Dark Acolytes didn't get their ward saves. That was actually kind of thing that kind of put the hurt on this unit and actually kind of destroyed as well. So because of that, we eliminate this unit right off the bat. And since there's nothing for these guys to overrun at, I just kind of test the restrain and keep my unit right where they're directly at. So that pretty much makes it the combat phase on this one. And once again, the Shadow over Innistrad as well as Rathric the Maw only managed to put 1 more wound on each other, which is actually kind of good for me because Rathric the Maw, the Kraken, only has 5 wounds. So if I manage to put another wound on top of that guy, I'll eventually kill him. At the same time, though, I have 3 wounds onto my monster, and it's only got 5 wounds, I think. Oh yeah, it only has 5 wounds too. So either way, you could go either way with these monsters. They have a really good combat phase next turn. I can either kill Rathric the Maw, or Rathric the Maw will kill my Vortex Fiend. So it'll be kind of interesting to see exactly how that plays out because these 2 monsters are just tearing into each other left and right. So that pretty much makes it the combat phase on this one. With that, we go directly to the top of turn number 4 for the Warriors of the Dark Gods. Alright, so here's the top of turn number 4 after the movement phase for the Warriors of the Dark Gods. As you can see in this photo, I charge into Lord Tremendous and have him charge directly into his general, which is Beast Lord Midas Daycare. I'm planning on putting the hurt on that guy in close combat as well. Everything else in my army just kind of changes its direction and switches its direction to face off against Virzil the Broken. I got my second sons on the top there, followed by my Stormlords, as well as my Crew of the Sea Fang with the leader Wolfric the Wanderer. Also, Spam also moves up a couple inches using his random movement to kind of get to the right-hand side of my unit of Barbarians as well. So things are not looking very good for Lady Dominant and the House Dake here. So after movement phase, we kind of move on to the magic phase. During the magic phase, I managed to get 10 magic dice. My opponent, Lady Dominant, she managed to get 5, but without a wizard, it ended up being pretty much kind of going my way. I got off the boosted version of Awaken the Beast and gave +1 strength and +1 toughness to Lord Tremendous. I also got off the chilling, not the chilling, yeah, I think it's the chilling, or was it Break the Spirit? It might have been Break the Spirit. That's the one they get -1 to hit. Yeah, that's what it is. -1 to hit. I got Break the Spirit off onto Beast Lord Midas Daycare, so that's why that's that little yellow die with the 1 there as well. So that makes the magic phase between these two. And I also managed to get another Totemic Summons and summoned up Sam, which is another right blue worm monster thing that you see there on the bottom of the page. So now my Totemic Beast is located there. The plan is to have this guy charge directly into the right-hand flank of Beast Lord Midas Daycare if combat doesn't do very well for Lord Tremendous. So that pretty much makes the magic phase, and since there's no shooting going on because everything's engaged in close combat, we go directly to the combat phase. And as you can see in this photo, in my Shadow over Innistrad, I managed to put the last wound onto Rathric the Maw, but not before Rathric the Maw put 1 more wound onto my Shadow over Innistrad, so now that guy's carrying 4 wounds, which is kind of sad, but you know, it's expected to be expected. It could have been a lot worse. They could have given me like an extra wound on top of that, and that would have been absolutely devastating if that had gotten off. And like I said before, Lady Dominant was just kind of like just spamming a roll, just doing like just having a really hard time with that, because Rathric the Maw usually the Kraken could do D3 wounds every single time it does wound, but she's been rolling 1s and 2s pretty much this entire battle report, so it's just absolutely atrocious. So anyways, got really lucky on that part. Shadow of Innistrad is live with 1 wound left, so you know, I can take whatever victories I can get. And then combat between these 2 titans is actually kind of lackluster. I managed to put 2 wounds onto the onto my opponent's general, so that part was kind of neat, but she didn't manage to put any wounds on me. However, I was hoping for a lot more destruction, you know, hopefully killing her general or killing her manticore, but you know, it's a really strong unit. It'd be kind of hard to rate that, especially with the Armor of Fortune, so I was pretty much lucky to get off the attacks that I did. So these 2 monsters kind of stick it out. Even though I beat her by 3, Lady Dominant managed to pass her, because she's been rolling really low this battle, she managed to pass her break test. also keeps them directly where they're located at now. So now these guys square off for another round of combat. And there it is, ladies and gentlemen. That takes us directly to the end of the game. Lady Domina takes a look around the table, realizes the only thing she has left is her War Hydra, as well as her General. She knows I'm going to start swarming those guys with the rest of my army, and this is where she kind of just calls the game and just kind of gives up. And poor thing, I feel so bad for her because she's been rolling like horribly during this entire battle report, and the only reason why I think I won this battle report is because of the 1s and 2s that she just kept on rolling, which was great for a break test for her General, but not so great for the rest of her army, unfortunately. So that was absolutely devastating. So here it is, folks. This is the shot at the end of the table. With that, we go directly to the after action report because this battle report is now officially over.
Sure, I could have stayed in the past. Could have even been king. But in my own way, I am king. Hail to the king, baby.
Alright people, now it's time for the after action report. This is the part of the battle report we talk about what went well, what went poorly, what we can learn for the next time that we do battle for the 9th Saga. This is the 9th Saga. 9th Age battle report number 18 is a 4,500 point battle. It was fought with my Legion of the Hellmouth of my warriors, the Dark Gods of Change, against my friend Lady Domina with her House Daycare, the Gold Reavers of Skyros of the Dread Elves. And that being a victory for Commander CheapSkate. So let's go and talk about some of the reasons why that led to this victory. First of all, the dice. The dice gods completely abandoned my buddy Lady Domina. She had no real good rolls, so because of that, that was the only reason why I won this battle, in my opinion. Had certain things happen like magic phases and shooting phases gone off correctly for her, just even on average, just rolling average for that part, she would have been devastating my army the entire time. The battle would have completely turned out differently if it wasn't for those lack of dice rolls for this battle. One of the things that ended up being the most important part of this battle, of course, was movement. Movement was everything in this battle because we were trying to protect our flanks and try to outmaneuver our enemies to keep our forces protected from the flanking forces that we had in our armies. Lady Domina's build that she went with is very monster concentrated, so that those armed monsters are used to charging the flanks and outmaneuvering her opponents and kind of like exposing those weaknesses and kind of devouring them that way. At the same time, so is my army. My army is kind of designed to be a quick-moving army and now to outmaneuver anything that they go up against. Same thing with the magic phase. For Lady Domina, the magic phase is pretty weak. She had some really lackluster magic phases, and like I said before, the battle would turn out differently if she was able to get the spell she needed to have, especially when it came to her dark alkalites. If she was able to use those dark alkalites like she needed to with those magical spells, it could have totally devastated my left-hand flank with my second sons. And speaking of magic, throwing weapons, when you combine that with an ambushing unit and with Awaken the Beast, equals instant success. I was able to develop the Dark Elves' center and basically destroy them to a man because I was able to destroy that unit of repeater auxiliaries and then charge forward and then catch those Dread Legionaries and her pincer attack and kind of like destroy them that way as well. Another problem, of course, is like cavalry. Those guys always fleeing every single time I try to charge them and then reforming and then causing more problems for my second sons is massive pain. Luckily for me, the magic phase is kind of weak for Lady Dawn, but she was able to use those spells, especially the two magic missile spells that unit is capable of using. It would have just totally destroyed my second sons by the time they got done. The shooting from the Dark Raiders, I wasn't really too concerned with because it's only strength 3 and my guys are toughness 3 and they got a really good armor save. But I guess that magic though would have been completely horrible if that had gotten off. Also, another thing I noticed about my army, I was vastly outnumbered by Dread Elves, and Dread Elves are high point army lists, so because of that, being outnumbered by them as much as I was kind of tells me that my points are too concentrated in my army. I'm thinking about actually changing up a little bit, maybe changing some points, different marks, trying out different units as well, trying to spread out my points and get more bodies on the table because my army is kind of like super concentrated. I mean, I'll always be outnumbered because I'm playing a Wars of the Dark Gods army anyway, but I was really outnumbered in this fight. It was also kind of interesting to fight at 4,500 points. It felt like something on my army was missing, like I was missing some models that I needed to have. So it was kind of interesting to see what it's like to play at such a lower point level, so it was kind of nice. But at the same time, though, this was a great battle. This was a fun opponent. I love playing as Lady Domina whenever I can, and I'm looking forward to the next fight because hopefully she'll get better dice rolls in those magic phases and just kind of, destroy me at that part. As always, you guys, please feel free to like, comment, and/or subscribe. It's always good to hear from you guys. You guys' input's always appreciated. And as always, feel free to check out our Instagram as well as Google Plus for all the latest news on the hobby aspect of our channel. So that's going to do it for this one, you guys. This one's in the book for 9th Age, 9th Saga, Battle Report number 18. As always, you guys, we alternate this every Sunday between this as well as our Warhammer Age of Sigmar Battle Reports. That's the Age of the Realms. And on Thursdays, we alternate between our Necromunda and Warhammer Fantasy Battle Reports. Those are Tales from the Underhive as well as Warhammer the Golden Age, respectively. All right, you guys, that will do it for this one. We'll see you guys in the next one. You guys stay classy. Catch you on the flip side.